If you don't want to get pain from playing, you need to stop making these 5 hand position mistakes. There are ways to play the piano that feel good for your body and ways that will hurt you. This is why some pianists become injured and some stay healthy throughout their careers. I will break down exactly what movements keep you in pain and what you can do to fix them. The first thing to understand about hand placement is that it needs to be as natural as possible. We need to use similar movements that we use in everyday life. However, most pianists develop habits that work against them. They play with too much pressure, effort, and uncomfortable angles. This causes stress on joints, ligaments, and nerves. So what actually is natural hand position? Let's take a closer look at it. It is the position that was given to you by Mother Nature. When you hang your arm by your side, your hand naturally takes a slightly curved shape. The wrist is a continuum of the forearm, and all the muscles of the palm feel really soft. This is the position where your hand and arm rests. And it's the position you need to become best friends with. So bring your arm up and let it rest on the keys. You'll notice that the fingertips are actually not as curved as many piano teachers advise. They are your fingers are resting slightly on the pads instead of fully on the fingertips. The thumb is relaxed and pointing downwards from the wrist. And there are no hard curves on any of your finger joints. However, the knuckles are holding the shape of the arch. This is the best hand shape to play from because it's natural. This is where your hand works the least. All the muscles are at rest position. So you need to come back to this position as often as you possibly can. The first habit is thumb orientation. Not only is thumb orientation a massive cause of wrist pain, it also means that if you have thumb orientation, you can't move your fingers properly. If we just look at our natural hand shape, our thumb is diagonal and our fingers are straight. This is where the wrist is in the most natural position. Thumb orientation means that people chronically turn their thumb up and their other fingers start becoming diagonal. So there is always a twist in the wrist towards the pinky. This may seem like a completely irrational and unnatural thing to do, but believe me when I say this, a lot of pianists have this habit without even realizing it. So I want you to check your own playing to make sure that you don't have thumb orientation in your technique. Try moving your fingers when your hand is in a natural position, and then twist your wrist towards your pinky and move the fingers again. There's a huge difference in the quality of movement. In here, the movement feels free and easy. In here, it feels restricted. So thumb orientation doesn't only cause your wrist to be in pain, it also limits your speed. Thumb orientation often happens when we start learning the piano by starting both hands on middle C position. This already intrinsically turns our hands into this position. So often when I see students start playing, even though, let's say, they're playing just a middle C, they already twist towards that thumb orientated position. Whereas when we look at the position from a natural angle, this is a much better way to lay the hand on the keys, where the thumb is a little bit diagonal to the key instead of straight to the key. We really don't want this twist in our hand because it creates so much tension on both sides of these hands. So it can create problems for the thumb, but it can also create problems for your pinky. Now, when it comes to other situations where thumb orientation happens, it's definitely at the beginning of scales where we turn into thumb orientation. And every time we need to use a thumb in our scale, we again twist our hand to thumb orientation. So the scale starts looking like this. So we go nicely until the third, and then we twist again the thumb to thumb orientation. And this twisting just continues. So this is one example of a thumb orientation. Another thumb orientated way is when playing chords and twisting the hand towards the thumb when we don't have to. So for example, when it comes to a chord, we can just make sure that we start from a position where the thumb is diagonal on the keys and we are more in the black keys. It's a very different hand position compared to this. And when it comes to playing the scale without thumb orientation, just comes down to what angle the thumb is on the key. So when the thumb is in this kind of a little diagonal angle, the hand is in a better alignment all the way from the forearm. And then we just use the thumb in the same position here on this key instead of turning it round. There are a couple of situations where we truly actually need to be in a thumb orientated position. And this is when we play anything across where we actually have to, let's say, play an octave. There are still ways to make it a little easier, but the higher you go, you will have to twist a bit. So remember, thumb orientation is not just about the positioning of the thumb, it's also about leading movements thumb first, which is something that is very common even in experienced pianists. So for example, when we play a bass pattern like this, I see a lot of pianists twist towards their thumb like this, whereas they should be leading the movement with their pinky, and the hand then moves more in this type of an angle instead of. So any type of twisting like this will cause this angling of the thumb that we don't want to have. Lead with the pinky whenever possible. And just a little side note when it comes to thumb orientation. When we are thumb orientated, we easily learn bad fingering habits, because let's look at this situation where we have to play a C and a B flat. Normally we would go for this with 1 and 5, with 5 kind of in the middle of the black key and the thumb diagonally, not too far from the black key. But if we are thumb orientated, what can happen is the 5 actually can't really reach this black key, so we end up favoring the 4th fingering chords and other structures instead of the 5, just because of the hand alignment. Look at the difference. In here, all the fingers are easily reaching all the black keys, and the 5 is nicely on the keys, and as soon as I'm thumb orientated, my 5 is out. So watch out for these situations. The second habit is lifting the fingers up too high. In piano playing, you don't really have to have an upward movement of the finger in order to press down the keys. So if that's part of your technique, you will be feeling the effects of it in your forearm and also possibly in your hand. When I was young, I was actually trained to lift my fingers up before I played any single sound. And this is something I've had to unlearn, because this movement kept me injured for decades. This habit puts a lot of strain on your tendons and also on your wrist. So if you see yourself playing in ways where you lift up the fingers too high, you need to address this. Here is an example of fingers being lifted too high. Sometimes we are taught how to lift fingers too high when we are trying to create certain types of sounds at the piano, be in control of the sound. So for example, in a situation like this, we want to create a beautiful sound, and we create it by lifting the finger way too high, when actually we don't need to do any of that. Other situations where fingers are going too high are arpeggios, whereas we can just go. The faster you go, the less you have time to lift. So in here as well, you really want to make sure that you don't actually lift your fingers any higher than you need to. And often you don't have to lift your fingers off the keys at all. The third habit is what I call the fear of black keys. This is very common, especially amongst beginners, but this habit can last all the way to people's professional careers, where they literally hold off the black key area and stay mostly at the white key area. This will cause friction anytime you play anything that actually has black keys in it, like scales or chord patterns, because you will end up needing to yank and pull towards the black keys. And that's definitely not what smooth piano technique is all about. So having this movement available where your hand can move easily from black key area to the white key area without any friction is crucial for good technique. Otherwise, you'll end up fighting your body every time you have to play a passage. When it comes to fear of black keys, often what happens is, and I'm going to use the same piece as an example, we just don't move in and out of the keyboard swiftly and smoothly enough. So we end up needing to yank and pull towards black keys. So here's what can happen if we are not very well keyboard orientated, meaning we don't know when to move back and forth on the keys. So if I start this little passage too low down here, I will never be able to reach that F sharp smoothly, and I will have to yank the hand towards it. So instead I'm going to be a little bit more inside the keys. It's sometimes good to see and put the black key down first and see where the other fingers would land. So for example, if I put my second finger here where it needs to go, where it's comfortable, my other fingers would land in this kind of a position, and then I just play it. In the next one, I don't really have to be in between the black keys because it's just white notes. But I could be because I'm coming from here. So the smooth transition actually from this black key area to the next white key area is better here rather than going in here and then really out on the next one. So for example, in here I'm playing the first one. another black key is here, so I shouldn't move out. I should stay in this position. And then I have all the way black keys here, so I have to go in. And in here as well, if I pull outward, I will have to twist towards the black key at the end, because that's the only option I have. So instead I'm going to move closer to the black keys, so my fourth finger is already comfortable. And in here is a little chord example where I need to move high up to the black keys quite quickly after the first chord. This one can be almost out in the white key area, but then I need to be inside the black keys here. If I don't move smoothly enough, I end up in a situation where this becomes very difficult to reach. Fear of black keys can also happen in scales. So for example, when it comes to an easy scale, let's say a D major, when we are not ready for the black key, what happens is this. The hand has to yank towards the black key. So we need to start closer to the black key. Stay inside the black keys to prepare for that black key here, the fourth finger on C sharp. So again, if you ever need to check what position you need to be in, put that fourth finger already on the black key, make sure you're not thumb orientated, and then see where your fingers need to be, and then you can play the keys. And it feels easy, you don't have to yank, you don't have to twist, nothing like that. The fourth habit is moving your fingers without proper arm support. This is called finger orientation, and it's the reason why you have pain in your wrist and in your forearm. You need to learn how to use your whole arm as the mechanism for creating sound instead of just your fingers. Here's a quick example from Clementi's Sonatina in C major on the first page where the scales go up. Here's how they would look like if played finger orientated. So the fingers are working a lot, they're often also curved, and what happens is that we lose our wrist flexibility, we also lose sometimes our elbow flexibility, and the fingers are working very hard. So instead we want to use a little bit more of the hand shaping. So for example, going up this G major scale, we don't want to go with our fingers doing all the work. We want to use the hand, allowing the fingers to release a little bit away from this deep curve, and then allowing the hand to shape this a little bit. So I'm going to do it in two patterns. Here's the first pattern. So with these little patterns, we actually avoid getting the fingers too active because the hand is starting to shape the movement a little bit. And now it doesn't feel so harsh on my back of the hand, also here, and it doesn't feel hard on my forearm. So instead of using the fingers as the only mechanism to create sound, you actually shape the sound with the help of your forearm, with your wrist, and also the freedom from your shoulder. The fifth habit is to do with the wrist position. You can either have the wrist too high or too low. If you have either of these habits going on in your playing, not only is your wrist going to get strained, your technique will also be limited. So let's first address the low wrist. Chances are that if your wrist is habitually low, it's because you've had a high wrist and somebody's advised you to keep your wrist lower, or you're trying to relax your hand and use arm weight. In natural piano technique, there is really no reason for the wrist to ever drop below the white keys. So it's good to be level with the forearm, like we already explored in the arm hanging by your side exercise. Any type of a low wrist will cause the fingers to have to play upward. This puts strain on the tendons and will cause your technique to be unsafe and insecure. It'll also make it really hard for you to reach black keys because there's a huge distance between this position and the black key position. If your wrist, however, is held too high, it means that you're constantly holding your arm up, and you might feel tension already up here in your shoulder, also in your elbow, and definitely in your wrist. Your hand can never release into a natural position if your wrist is chronically high, because there is no way it can have this position of release. Your wrist position might also be affected by your chair height. So if your wrist is chronically high or low, this is something that you want to check as well. In an ideal position, your wrist is approximately level with the forearm and your elbow is at the height of the white keys or a little bit higher. Keep your wrist flexible, keep it moving, but return it to this home position as often you can, because that's the way to avoid any kind of strain, especially when you play a lot. I hope this video was helpful. Leave me any questions and comments below, and I will see you in the next video.